You're watching Thorin's YouTube channel. Please seek professional help.
Now, FaZe Clan, the #1 team in CS2 so far, the best team of the post-online era, arguably, of CSGO, was recently on a pretty big win streak. They were on an 18-match win streak in the game. They had won the first 3 tournaments that they attended in CS2, one of them an online comp, 2 of them LANs. The streak lasted up until the grand final of Blast 4 finals. So if they'd have beaten Vitality, it would have gone to 19 and it would have been 4 events. And, well, sadly now we know Twists would leave, but would have been interesting, right? Would have been a bit of a bummer to know the streak could never continue. And so they almost made it 4. Now, obviously, this is at the start of CS2 competition, so it's understandable. The new game's come out, people are not sure, is it good, is it not? A team comes along and dominates, it's a team of established players, it was a formerly great team. It sort of legitimizes the game, right? It shows that actually this is a game that can be dominated and played properly. It's something I talked about with Paladin in Rescope. It's why I actually think NIP dominating early CSGO was the best possible thing for the game. So let's talk, first of all, about some comparable streaks so you know why this one, unfortunately, when you pick it apart, it's pretty overrated, actually. It was just kind of cool in the moment. So let's be real. NIP has, on paper, the craziest streak ever. Now, everyone knows it's 87-0, but this is a key point we need to make about win streaks, I've noticed. That was 87-0 maps, as in individual games, in a row that NIP won. So I think overall people say it was like 60 matches. Now look, 60 matches as a win streak is so insane. Nobody will ever tie 60 matches in a row. That will never be beaten as a record. I don't think 87-0 can ever be beaten. I was there and I still couldn't believe it was happening. They even had some 16-14s, 16-13, and you were like, how did they never lose? It just seemed impossible. And some of their players really were just on another stratosphere completely. But let's be real, I don't actually think that is the best streak ever in Counter-Strike, because it was the start of CSGO, literally from their first map in CSGO. By the way, their first tournament was like a Swedish Steel Series LAN with some absolute nobodies there. Also, look, it is an insane streak, but some of the early tournaments in general, like they were going to Northland in fucking Germany, like some of these tournaments are just smaller events. Like they're not comparable to the kind of big events that like Team Liquid and Vitality and some of these teams played in the now modern era. And then also, that was maps, not matches. And so it is insane as the accomplishment. When you drill down into some of the specifics, it's extremely good, but I don't think it's the best one. I think the best streak ever in Counter-Strike is Team Liquid 2019, going apparently 23 matches, but 22 best of 3/best of 5 series won in a row. And they were only 3, if they'd have won the Starlight of Berlin, they'd have tied it from NIP's record of 25 in a row. Now, they are doing that in 2019. NIP started in 2012. The idea that 7 years later into the game, and now all the scenes are activated and developed, and all the money and massive salaries and smart psychologists and trainers and coaches and people at demo viewing and utility, everything that we have in the game now, to do that kind of a streak, I think it's insane. Now, sadly, people downplay it. There is no Astralis. Astralis is one of the victims on the streak, and then they could have been a victim twice, but they didn't show up in the Cologne final because they got beaten by old RPK. Yeah, exactly. Talk more trash, boys. And so then, I think after that, you get to some very good streaks, but there's a reason they're not #1, which is obviously Astralis. The legendary GOAT Astralis had some streaks, right? They don't have Team Liquids and they don't have NIPs. They had 17 matches in a row in 2018. By the way, NIP had 60 matches. Then they had a different one in 2019 when they had the revival. They had 15 matches in a row. Obviously, this year, including last year, whatever, G2 had the 16-match win streak, which was pretty impressive at the time. Na'Vi had a 15-match win streak in 2021 with their dominant lineup. Luminosity back in 2016 had a 15-match win streak. Vitality this year, going from IEM Rio after they lost the opener through to the final of Blast Spring. Ironically, actually, it was the first game of Blast. It was when they lost to Imperial in the opener. They managed only 12 matches. Actually, that doesn't even deserve to be in this competition, except theirs did include a major, to be fair, although they had pity-pat opponents in the major playoffs. So, okay, the key thing to state is this. First and foremost, those results are 100% on LAN, as far as I am aware. That's it. On LAN. FaZe, one of these tournaments is an online competition. So let's go and look at the tournaments and you'll start to see why it's just a little bit over. It's not even close to the best streak of all time. So obviously they played in these tournaments here. This was the first CS2 tournament. IM Sydney, then they had Thunder Pick, which is online, then they had CSGO Asia Championships, was offline, with like good teams, but not insanely stacked. And then we had Blast 4 Finals, which was not great because of the lineups, but okay, it's the teams that qualified. So we'll go and look. First things first, let's just get it out the way. Thunder Pick is an online tournament, and I don't care about online play, and neither does it ever count into the history of great streaks. So let's just take that out. So if we go and look, in the group stage, 1-2-0, so there's 2 games. So count it up, boys, 2. Then in the playoffs, 3 series, so 5 total. Remove 5 from 18, it becomes 13 match win streak, which is far less impressive and epic. And it's good, but like, it's just like the Vitality one. It's not even as good as the G2 one, arguably. And Vitality won a major during theirs. And then I told you, there's loads of other teams that have had really long streaks. So this isn't as bonkers as you might think. It's more that it's being the CS2 and no one knew how the game could be dominated. Then you go and look at who they beat. Let's go look at some of the matches. So over here, they lose to Gamer Legion to start out with. Then they beat Vitality. That's epic. They beat Na'Vi. Pretty good. Na'Vi was even sort of heating up. Obviously, this is when they had to bring in... what do you call it? This is when they brought in... This is when Blade had to stand in. Blade replaced Simple. So already, that gets not as impressive. And then you beat Gamer Legion. How are you even playing Gamer Legion here? Because Gamer Legion actually, as well as beating them there, beat Bet Boom, because Bet Boom beat Vitality, and then bizarrely they end up with Gamer Legion, Apex, and the lot. So you got kind of like a bit of an easier opponent there. This isn't that crazy so far. You go to the playoffs, you beat Ents. Hey, that's pretty legit, right? I think this is when Ents didn't even have the stand-in for this event. So just a banger win. Great win there. Considered top team in the world. Then you beat Mouse. This was Mouse with... stand-in though, so not the top 3 team of the world. They have a stand-in there. But okay, you beat them. Then in the final, you beat Complexity. Now look, I'm not going to hit on Complexity. They've been good in CS2 so far. But people like Halzerk and Grim aren't CS legends, are they? So like, this is like good. And by the way, they absolutely could have lost this final. Elise was playing great. And if it wasn't for certain people on FaZe's just playing like lights out and winning impossible rounds, I think Cole would have won this final. So this could have been a streak over immediately. Then let's go to the other 2 lands. You go to CS Asia Championships. You go down here, 2-0. So you're going to get, you beat NIP. Now remember, that's why it's match, not map/series, because one of them is a BO1. So it's already, if you go on series compared to Team Lick's 22, this would only be 17. And if you take the 5 off, it'd be 12. 12 is nothing compared to 22. 10 series in a row, best of X, is no mean feat. And then this is an insane overtime game against bloody NIP, who were kind of whack. Then you beat Mouse. You go into the playoffs. You beat Ents. But the problem is, this is Ents with a stand-in. See what I mean? The rosters just weren't set. It means that some of the big scalps aren't as crazy anymore. So you beat Ents with a stand-in. And by the way, you barely beat them. They smash you and you barely squeak out an OT and then a 13-11, which remember, we're on MR12 now. 13-11 is an old 16-14. That's as close as it gets. Essentially, they outplayed you in theory over the series, but you won the key rounds. That's the nature of professional Counter-Strike. Then in the final, you play Mouse and... you smash them on the first one, mega close second one, so many close. There's very little dominance in general in this particular performance. There's just some in the Intel Extreme, that was with stand-ins. So people also forget this win on LAN. Man, this is mad ropey. They just clawed through all the close games. So impressive to get the streak, but not quite as nuts. Then you go to Blast 4 Finals. 2-0, it's going to be a 2-0 again. So you have NIP, confident, comprehensive win, insanely close series against Cloud9. And remember, this is Cloud9 with no AWPer. Insanely close series here. You could have lost all over the place on these 2 maps here, especially Anubis. Then you go to the playoffs. You beat Col. Not that close overall. They'll win a map off you. You are losing maps. Remember, NIP can never lose a map for their 87-0 streak. And then in the final, you get smashed on the first one. You actually had a very good chance from a 7-5 point on nuke, but you don't convert and you just lose 0-2. So all in all, you look at this as a set of performances And when you look at who they beat, it was early CS2, by definition, the easiest time to dominate a game and be ahead a lot when people haven't figured it out and the meta hasn't been sorted yet. And you have an established core. You haven't even changed any players. And other people are making roster moves and having standings. Rops was playing out of his mind, like stealing rounds you have no business winning from the way your team played the round out. And also, the game's just a mess in general. It's getting patch updated between Sydney and between CASC, and now it's going to be patch updated again. It's all over the place at this point in time. People aren't using the AWP as much. They're a team with all the best rifles. Like, Brokey isn't a traditional AWPer. There's so many factors playing in FaZe's favour here. I even think they're like faster tempo of people doing rushes because of the smokes and the less rounds. Means Carrigan's gambles have way more of an effect on winning the game and coming back into it. Then, when you talk about NIP doing their 60-match win streak, right, they're having to win 2-0 every single time. FaZe is having 2-1s and close games, and yeah, this is just not on the same level. I will say the problem with streaks is people don't appreciate them in the moment because they're like, oh, well, and then when they win this event, they'll be up to 20, and then from 20 they win the next to 25, and so suddenly they're there, and it's like you give them it before they did it. Whenever someone on TV in a football match or whatever, or basketball game says, right, he's on 28 free throws in a row, and you know, the record of all time is 30. Spoiler, bet that he won't make it. Because there's a reason that record stands. It's insanely hard to set these records. That's why it is the record and only one person ever did it. So I do think people don't appreciate streaks once they've happened in the context of history. Like, this is why I understand fans counting, but the broadcast doesn't do a good enough job following these streaks. You've got to have all this put in context so people really know they're watching something special in this moment that is going to be history remembered for this moment. History is there for a reason, as Team Liquid found out. So I do think, look, it was a good streak, but it was overrated. I may not have the most supporters in the world, but the ones I do have are straight fire. And they include Matt Pugnatio Rajcula, Frisky, Ahmed Hadjou, Thorin, Tobias Bernasconi, Animosity, Tosh, Jensen Goh, and you know it always is a special thanks going out to Jerky's Minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my show? Do you want to see things I say on my Discord, little piece of straight fire I drop in the Patreon-only channels, stories I tell people and the other ones? Do you want to ask a question in my monthly AMA? Do you want teasers, find out who the next guests are for Reflections interviews? Maybe you want to be one of those people who takes part in the long-form discussion with me where we talk about whatever's on your mind in esports. Well, if any of those or more sound interesting, why not support me, put your money where your mouth is, and join the Scrolluminati today via the Patreon link in the description box below.